With Frankie Perez, it just jumped out at me when the announcer said that Mark Henry was kind of caught by surprise at that retirement announcement. So let's just get that one out of the way, and I'd like to know your feelings on Frankie Perez retiring. You know, was it just one of those where you you gave him a pat on the back and congratulated him, or was there some disappointment on your end?
Yeah, he's saying, like all our guys, I said, our family, we try not to have big stables. Ricardo and I, we have other businesses, but, unless we could spend a ton of time on each guy that we have, we'd rather not, have them go maybe to a bigger gym or something like that, because, we try not to take too many guys so we can give them the time that they deserve and need for, to prepare for a fight and to get better as a fighter. So, so the guys that we pick, we really have a bond with. And so whatever Frankie decides, I back 100%. The only thing that bummed me out a little bit was this camp that he just had was probably one of his best camps on progressing as a fighter, in his ground game, his stand-up, and so I was really excited that his game got so much better. He was getting so much more comfortable. We had him boxing a lot. So, that's why I was a little bummed on that. But he also has another business too, Frankie. His parents own a couple different businesses, and he does. So, I'm sure that will thrive. So whatever he decides, I back 100%, and I care about what he does, first. But I'm just a little bummed because he got so much better this camp,
If Frankie were to have been given that replacement role that was given to Chad Mendes against Conor McGregor, as a coach, how would you strategize for something like that with so little time? What would, I don't even think you could call it a camp, but what would that look like, the training before a fight like that?
Well, Frankie's always ready. We train, after 1 week of Frankie's fights, we're training again. So, and he was ready, I always try to be nice, but, I just feel so bad for Frankie, man. Like, he got stepped off in that fight with, for a lot of money, and, he was right. In fact, we were training at the time in my basement, and we called up right away. Ali, we called up for Tita, and we wanted to get it, and we thought we were going to get it. And I think Conor, if Conor ever fights Frankie, I think you would know that fight right off their sixth fight. Frankie's sixth fight, you saw his leg cranked up against Tyson Griffin, and you see Frankie. There's no way you would have had to rip his leg off. He's not tapping, as opposed to Conor. As Conor, the guy barely had his hand around him, and he's tapping already. And then a couple fights later, the same thing. So I think that's the total difference in those two's mindset and heart and what they're made of. And I think that if those two ever fought, it'd be a big problem for Conor. Frankie, a major problem. We're up, down. Conor talks about Frankie and Mendes being small. I think it's the opposite. I think. The kid obviously walks around 175. And you saw he looked like death, the day of the fight. I think, like Frankie fought 155 at 153. Conor will never be able to accomplish what Frankie has, because he would have to fight at 170, and then he can't even make it at 155 without Khabib crushing him or Dos Anjos killing him, or Edson Barboza ripping his head off with a head kick. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah. As opposed to even 155, I don't think he'll ever be the class of Frankie. And like I'm saying, weight class. If Frankie's not small, he's just not afraid. Frankie should be 35, but he has enough nerve to be a 45, 55.